My name's Allan. I spent 47 years of my life raising capital for junior resource companies. I retired from Haywood Securities approximately 1 year ago, and about 3 months ago, this company, which was then Beyond Minerals, which was one that I did an IPO for and took them public, asked me if I would help them out and work as president and CEO. So since it already had my mark on me, it was kind of a natural thing for me to take advantage of that opportunity, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the company, about the structure. For me, in my career, there's always three things. There's the people, the structure, and the properties, and if those fit the criteria, you probably had an above average chance of having success. At the end of the day, it's all up to Mother Nature anyway. But let me take you through this slideshow and tell you a few things that I like about the company. The investment highlights, here we are. 3 months ago when I joined the company, we were working on a deal to pick up about 20,000 hectares of land in Ontario. And the reason we were in Ontario was because after, as John alluded to earlier, there's been a land rush out here. It's sort of like a quiet rush that nobody was aware of, but you could pick up properties in Quebec for $50 a hectare, and then we went to look at them and they were $500. So how are you going to get it established? It costs you millions of dollars to get your starter kit. So looking at Ontario, the prices were, quite reasonable, like $60 or thereabouts. So they were going to pick up 20,000 hectares and we were going to become a lithium company. But when they asked me to join, I thought to myself, well, we better look different than everybody else right off the bat. So I said, well, go big or go home. How much of these prospectors got? So they had, 150,000 hectares. So we took it. And we took them too, by the way, which I'll explain a little more about to you here in a moment. So we recently did a flow-through fund or raise at 50 cents, no warrants attached to it. Friends of the company were anxious to buy it. I'd like to think it was because I joined them, but that may or may not be true. So at any rate, we raised enough money to fully fund our 2023 program, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. Now, we have 64 different properties, so for me, we got 64 shots at finding something reasonable and economic, so I'm pretty happy with that. It's an awful large land package, but I'll tell you how we intend to deal with that here shortly. There is historic drilling there, so there's several of these properties that were drilled back even in the 80s, where the core is still there. It's in government warehouses. So in June, we intend to go down there and relog it and do some assaying. So, if there's anything valuable in those cores, it would save us a lot of time and money and energy to have potential discoveries. So we're pretty cranked about that. That was a bonus that came with these land packages. So we have mapped 500 pegmatites that you can see. You can see them from the air. I have no idea how many are undercover, but there will be lots. So we've got targets galore here. And then as we get on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the share structure. You can see from this one, at the bottom line there, we've got 34 million shares out fully diluted. But if you look at the chart on the right, 54% is owned by founders and insiders. So that's important. There's no sellers in this company. These guys are long-term builders and they have good vision. So that's an important thing. That 6.7% is interesting, because when we acquired these properties and basically locked up through service agreements the rights and the work for the two prospectors we bought them from, they automatically became large shareholders of ours. They're very passionate about their work. These two guys, I've got to tell you, they spent over 4,000 hours researching these projects over the course of a year and a half. They acquired these properties about a year ago, and they had pretty strict criteria for it. They walked the ground for everything they could. They went through old archives. They're looking for buzzwords that the normal person would never take the time to do. And as prospectors, they'd have put up $400,000 to acquire this land package. So that's a really good commitment for me. They're super passionate, and we're pleased to have them shareholders, and they're actually working in the field for us right now. So of the rest of the float there, which is 11 million, about 8 million of that belongs to people that I did the IPO with, and other friends and associates, that I've been doing business with for, most of my adult life. So they're builders, they're all builders. They understand the game. They know what exploration's all about. You don't have to teach them anything. The rest of the float is other people that I don't know, but that creates some liquidity and some volumes, and that's important too. So moving on to the next slide, about Beyond. We're the only project generator dedicated to advancing the largest portfolio of properties in Ontario. Well, so what? The point is we have a lot of property, we have a lot of potential, we've got a lot of talent, and if there's any lithium or other precious rares to be found on these properties, our team will find it. We provide exposure to multiple properties. As I said earlier, it's like you get 61 shots for the same buck, so I'm pretty pleased with that as well. The exploration budget, I raised about $1.3 million, a little more than $1.3 million net in flow through, but our budget's only $1.2 million, and it's a three-phase budget. The first one is underway now. We have 9 people on the ground doing prospecting work and like ground truthing, as they call it. So in the first phase, we'll be able to put these 64 properties into 3 different tiers. Ones we can't live without, others that we love but can't get to, and others that perhaps we'll either drop them or we'll spin them out one way or the other. It remains to be seen how many are in each category, but we will be boots on the ground on all 64 properties by the middle of August. So we're going to take a good look and see which ones we should prioritize for phase 2. When we get into phase 2, I expect we'll have somewhere between 10 and 15 properties that are more attractive than others for normal geological reasons. So we will spend the next couple months working on those properties and basically prepping them for drilling and targeting. Once we've got that done, we expect optimistically to be able to poke a couple holes into one or more of those properties before our year end to give us a little more something to think about over the winter, when the snow flies. So, and we're pretty stingy guys with shares. I spent 47 years figuring out how not to finance companies. They're not all good. It used to be a point in time, the more shares you had out, the better off you were. But, I think those days are past because, I look at a lot of companies, they have good market caps, but they trade at like 2 cents. It's really, really challenging out there. And if you have too many shares, it's pretty hard to exert any control and influence over your shareholder group. So we're going to be pretty careful about that. I could have raised more money and marketed that flow through harder, but I didn't actually need the money. And you've got to take a look at this company. We've got like a $10 million market cap. We're the largest landowner in Ontario. It's almost laughable. And I'll show you a slide at the end of this, which kind of indicates how cheap I think we are relative to our peers. It says in there how many shares we have outstanding, but we've already talked about that. We had a great day yesterday. We actually had an uptick, so we're at 10 million now. 4 strategic pillars. Well, quality assets, we're talking about it, and we love it. We think we have good quality assets because we didn't just grab 150,000 hectares, because they were cheap or anything, but there's a lot of thought and research gone into each property that we've acquired. So we think they're all prospective, and we'll go to work to try to prove that here in the next few months. They're Ontario assets, as I said, because we basically couldn't get into Quebec. Well, we could have, but for a little company like ours, you don't want to spend $2-3 million on your starter kit. And we didn't have the money to do it, nor the inclination to do it. And the shield's the shield. Shield doesn't stop at the border. There's pegmatites all over the place. So I was very happy that we were able to pick up these properties at the price that we picked them up at. Financial discipline, well, like I said, I spent 47 years learning how to be disciplined financially with shares and that sort of thing. And I think we've got a pretty good grip on things. We have a really good group of existing shareholders. We have access to capital markets, through my associations over the years. And others in the company have spent over 30 years raising capital for juniors as well. So I think we've got that down pretty pat. Favorable share structure we already looked at, so not much to talk about there either. The unique approach to staking, as I told you, there's 2 guys here who spent 4,000 hours, and these guys they just are tireless. They're in the field all day. They come back at night and they work the computers until I'm sure they pass out cold from exhaustion at their desks, and then get up in the morning and go back with their hammers and come back to the computers again. They're still looking at properties. So we have a really good land position. It's unlikely to end here. Things will come and go. They'll ebb and they'll flow. But we're always looking at additional properties. And our guys are, they're very astute. If there's other activity in certain areas, that look interesting, we'll be on it. Anything that our prospector partners find, we've obviously got first right of refusal on. So it's kind of an open-ended book. We just keep looking and looking and looking. And if other attractive things come up, we'll acquire them to the best of our ability. The preliminary prospecting, last year they did quite a bit of work in the field, but it wasn't as extensive as the program we have right now. So as I said, we've got 9 people there, including the 2 prospectors, whom are really good working guys. And we've already taken about 150 samples, about half of which are at the lab. And the other half will be there, probably delivered next week, as we're continuing to gather samples. So, this is just the beginning of our program. We expect, sort of pessimistically at this stage of the game, 4-week turnaround on assays. So we're pretty confident that by mid-August, certainly by the end of August, we'll have walked the ground on all 24 properties. We'll be able to categorize them all and decide on the next plan. And our budget is modest. We're careful with what we spend, and we're very thorough with the work that we do. Milestones. So after acquiring the property, I thought, well, that's a pretty good introduction to the business. We look big, we look impressive, even though we haven't done anything. So the next thing was, we've got great guys in the field, but we needed a team leader. So a person that I've known for over a decade is Lawrence Sang. He is presently the chief field geologist for Ascot Resources. He's a very well-educated guy. He's gone from grassroots exploration, discovery, development, mine production, the whole 9 yards, and mine financing. He's been an integral part of all of that. That company expects first pour in the first quarter of 2024. So when I contacted him on this, he'd actually been spending some time working for a private concern in Ontario looking at lithium properties. So, what a lucky thing that was. So he is excited about the battery metals sector, very excited, and was happy for the opportunity. And I personally was, really, really pleased, because I have a known entity that I have a great relationship with. So I've got my #1 checker there on the line, and I was very happy for that. Just recently, as of Friday morning, we announced the addition of a technical consultant, and that consultant is a person by the name of Graham Evans. And Graham has over 40 years exploration experience. He's a self-employed geologist. He's had a very, very good career. I've known him for well over a decade. He actually spent 16 years of his career with TechCorp, and he looked after exploration projects on a worldwide basis. So he brings a wealth of knowledge to us. I also have a great personal relationship with him for a long, long period of time. So getting Graham too was sort of the icing on the cake, because if you don't have good people and you have the properties, you may miss more than you ever see. So I was very, very, very happy to have that happen. It worked out really good. The other milestones here, well, I'm financed for the year. I can hardly read that stuff there, John. But the exploration program is underway. It will go till the snow flies. Boots on the ground, 9 guys. Other things we're doing, we're going to look at examining the core. We're going to do, we're building a database, because undoubtedly we'll be inundated with companies that would like to JV these properties as we get more data on them. We've already received many, many calls. Once we progress a little further and have more knowledge, we'll take a good look at that as well. And then very quickly here, our property locations are almost too great to talk about. However, I might say that we don't have one that isn't in the vicinity of a significant discovery. Everyone. And they weren't, our picks were not based on that. Our picks are based on other hardcore information, and they happen to turn out like that, which is no surprise. So I'm very happy with that. This last one, this is just like for the guys that like stats. Some of you may and some of you won't. You take a look at this, and Greenfields explorers that don't have any significant discoveries under their belt traded over $500 a hectare. If you have a discovery of significance, you're over $2,500 a hectare. We're the new kid on the block, and we're going to earn a better price and a higher market cap. We're like $60. There's a huge discrepancy here. However, we haven't earned a higher price yet, because we're just beginning our exploration program in the field, but we're here to earn it, and we're going to deliver on it. And we're going to give it our best shot. So if any of you are shareholders, I thank you. If any of you aren't, you may want to consider it. And in the meantime, thank you for listening to me, and all the best to everyone. Thank you.